Hello. I've been a Lost fan for years, and I only recently rewatched the show since it first aired in 2004 to 2010. But sometime in the middle of that, I wrote a couple of things that I thought the show needed. One I've called the Lost Episode DHARMA, or DHARMA, a Lost Episode, and the other I called Lost Answers. Probably completely wrong, but anyway, this is what I wrote. I'm guessing probably 2006, 2007, since all I have is a hard copy and not a soft copy on my computer, which is lost in cyberspace somewhere. So I will read it. I will put on my glasses because I'm over 50 and I can't read that well. So I'm going to attempt to read it in the voices that they're supposed to be, and you can surmise who they are. So, DHARMA, a Lost Episode. Just a bit of a recap. The episode will run like the recap episodes, but narrated by orientation film spokesperson Marvin Kendall, or Pierre Chang, or Edgar Halifax, or whatever name he goes by. So, consider this is him. The year is 1970. Anthony Cooper, currently going by the name of Alvar Hanso, has established a multi-million-dollar corporation that buys and sells other companies with a reasonably substantial profit margin. Hanso needed to relieve some of his profits in order to reduce his taxes. Charitable organizations were useful for lowering your taxes, but donating to a research project could potentially make him pay no taxes at all. Then he met de Groot, who was forming the DHARMA Initiative Research Project. DHARMA was an acronym for the following: research. This is where I was wrong. DNA, hunted animal research, and magnetic anomalies. But hey, we didn't know what it meant at the time, so that was my guess. DNA was a big topic of the era. The ability to test for it was cost prohibitive, requiring funding. Many animals were facing extinction. Seeing how they react to this was worth study. Sharks, polar bears were listed to be studied. Magnetic anomalies like the Bermuda Triangle were difficult to study. There were others around the world. De Groot had friends in the military, a young man named Goodwin, that informed him of a newly formed island in the South Pacific, near the former Army airfield at Palmyra Atoll. Surveillance satellites were new technology and had not discovered the island as yet. Goodwin was working on a system designed to prevent satellite detection, but required a high magnetic field. He had done preliminary readings on the island and was astounded by its magnetic properties. Since de Groot was also interested in magnetic anomalies, he suggested Goodwin bring the military's new technology to the island. In all, he figured they would need several bunker-type facilities to study the various projects they intended to do. Goodwin was able to round up several servicemen willing to steal equipment and build on the island. Based on his manpower, the bunkers would be complete within a year. The island itself was a major power source, and geothermal technology was used, but communication was necessary. So they tapped into South Pacific communication line running from Vancouver to Sydney. It was laid years earlier under Sir Sanford Fleming's direction. I'm related. It also prevented their location from being found, as the only known source of the cable were Vancouver and Sydney. Within a year, the hatches were functioning. and volunteers were required to run the facilities. Though many of Goodwin's men helped build the DHARMA facilities, they expected to be paid. De Groot had convinced a man named Alvar Hanso to donate generously to this cause, a facility based in Hawaii, and was able to acquire food goods and relabeled them as DHARMA products. This was one of several facets of DHARMA that Hanso was funding, including compensation to Goodwin's men for their work. Some, happy with their pay, were free to live their lives supposedly with no connection to DHARMA. Others realized volunteering to live. Next page. Really bad at turning. On a Pacific island would be ideal escape from the reality of their homes. Kelvin was one such man. He would be partnered with another man, whose job was to control the Swan Bunker computer, which prevented satellites from locating the island, and had regular food rations delivered in order to survive. Hanso was never satisfied with his life as a business mogul, and used to acquire more funds in a less professional manner. He took the name of Sawyer to con innocent families of their life savings for the promise of big payout. One such family he conned was that of the Fords. After stealing their money, the father shot himself, not knowing his son James was under the bed. James vowed to find Mr. Sawyer and wrote a letter to him. Hanso had other relationships under different names. He fathered a child named John with a woman by the name of Locke. 20 years earlier, to her, he was Anthony Cooper, a name he would use again to meet his son 30 years later. He had arranged with de Groot, however, to have John visit a doctor for a routine physical for his first job after college. What really occurred was a DNA test sampling that de Groot would use on the island. John's DNA would become a clone, and Ethan was born on the island. The doctor working for de Groot was actually a surgeon named Shepard. Hanso had acquired an airline called Oceanic. Oceanic would be used by the project to locate study subjects. De Groot was skilled at manipulation of travel documents and was able to redirect people he was interested in to be on the same flight. It was during years at Sawyer that Hanso started regretting his actions and sold his company assets to Widmore. Widmore was owned by a Vietnamese crime boss. It was during this transition that the incident happened. The U.S. military satellite network had located an island south of Bilmer Atoll, but it disappeared as fast as it had appeared. From that point forward, the code had been entered. 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. The code was a series of constellations upon which all the bunker hatches were labeled. M4, Scorpius, M8, Lagoon Nebula Sagittarius, M15, Pegasus, M16, Serpens, M23, Cluster in Sagittarius, and M42, Orion Diffuse Nebula. M39 is Cygnus the Swan, meaning 7 hatches were built, and 39 is outside the code. Perhaps this is the reason the code is entered there. Once de Groot had finally contacted the owner of Widmore and explained how his money was funded, the owner was able to suggest more people to study, his daughter and son-in-law. Though the family doctor feared his reaction to Jin and Son's inability to have children, Son's father actually understood. With de Groot's help, they would be sent to an island that could cure the condition and allow him to become a grandfather. De Groot had indicated that the magnetic properties of the island had enormous healing abilities, and it may be enough to cancel Jin's infertility. Before selling the assets to Whitmore, Hanso had insisted that his son, John, now in a wheelchair, be healed from his paralysis, caused after some hitmen had broken his legs in several places after failing to locate Hanso under the guise of Anthony Cooper. After carefully researching all of his subjects for many years before the requests from funders, de Groot had managed to locate all of them in Sydney and arranged Oceanic to be the only connection to Los Angeles, where he had, through careful monitoring of his subjects, been able to make them all choose that destination. One of them being Dr. Shepard's son, Jack, also a surgeon in Sydney, to return his father's body to the USA. Now that everyone was located, all they had to do was bring them to the island. Lost. Thank you for watching.